because we've not seen for years. So happy New Year's. All the years that have passed in the current one. Good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be in the Freedom FM studio. And good morning to the people of Liberia. Good morning to the hosts at the other radio stations, Freedom, Truth. I think it's Radio Liberia.
Yes.
Yeah, Voice of Liberia.
Voice of Liberia.
Okay.
And to the online family. So to say good morning, and I'm looking forward to an amazing engagement with the two very brilliant individuals before me.
Whenever people hear Simeon Freeman is making radio appearance, just mean the audience increase, and that is a commendation because you know he does not miss his words on issues. And so having you here this morning, I'm sure our audience is excited to have you. Already we'll read some of the comments on our live, but I know they've already started commenting, and some are already suggesting what you're going to say on some of the issues. Come to Freedom FM. Now, I like, even though I know you want to start from where you want to start, but how does it feel being an opposition leader for the past 10, 15, close to 20 years?
Oh, it feels good. It means that it clearly means that we come to understand yet how to communicate with the voters. It means that we need to learn more how to get the voters to understand that the things we're saying work for Liberia. And every time we've participated in the process and we've lost, we've learned. And resultantly, it changes our approach. You can see this time starting much earlier. We're working with various groups. We're going to be engaging the young people a lot more. We're going to be engaging communities a lot more. We're going to be engaging with representative candidates a lot more, something we clearly overlooked.
What do you think particularly could be responsible? Do you think it's messaging?
No, it's not messaging. It's communication. Your messaging is good. The messaging is good. The thing is that...
You think the messaging is good?
Oh, yeah. People know the messaging is good. They say that. But then we don't communicate early enough. You see, the challenge in Liberia and what leads to the miscarriage, or what I'll call miscarriage of representation, is that take this last election. They named the people already knew were Joseph Boakai, and they knew that Joseph Boakai came second to Joshua. So obviously, frustration with Joshua means let's consider Boakai. It doesn't mean that other people may not have had good messaging, or other people may not, but politics is a game of the known. So if you make yourself known much earlier, and the people know you, then they see you as an alternative. The window for campaigning is just about three months. And so you don't have sufficient time to communicate adequately enough. And because you don't have sufficient time, you could buy 5,000 motorbikes for all care. You could be giving those 5,000 motorbikes to criminals, right? To people who would take it and say, I'm going to campaign in a district, in this place, and take it and use it for the personal issues. You could buy 500 cars for all care. But if you have proper engagement, time in advance, and you engage with those people properly enough, then they know you. For example, there are places Boakai Unity Party got significant votes from that are really leading campaign there. The only other party that really got solid vote out of Southeastern Liberia, even though the presence was weak, was Unity Party. Why? Because it was known much earlier in advance. And so we started much earlier, and we will crisscross this country much earlier to make sure the MPC and Simeon Freeman brand is very strong, and that's why we're working with different teams much earlier. And we think that's our significant weakness for all of us that are aspiring for the process. So the way we work, I come from the private sector. When there is a failure, you don't say, oh, it doesn't work. It works. However, the approach you may have used led to the failure.
Conversations are already being held,
right,
about the possibility of a two-party state.
By whom?
There are different circles where pundits or opinionists are already telling you that
you have to change the constitution. So those discussions are going nowhere. Let's not spend time.
It may not be legal,
right,
but like you spoke about messaging, theme, popularity, and all of that. The political parties, for example, that are in the minds of Liberians are Unity Party, CDC, Unity Party, and CDC. Now, from the early steps of Mr. Boakai's missteps, obviously, don't you think CDC will still be an option because of Boakai's missteps?
Well, but you know,
than any other political party?
You look at it from that standpoint because you've already saturated your mind with what you claim are discussions ongoing. But what I'm saying to you are important is communication with the people. The people are not aligned with or in favor of any two-party arrangement. Even in America, there are lots and lots and lots of political parties that you may not be aware of. What you hear is Democrat, Republican. There are lots and lots of political parties. Some of them feel independent candidates, some of them feel presidential candidates, but you probably don't follow that because
and some don't
of
even
the type of news.
Some don't even contest for the presidency.
Right. So another circumstance, we're saying messaging. So all we're saying, we've learned, and we're going to engage. We're going to ensure that we engage with the right sectors of society. Let me give you an example. There were 2.4 million registered voters. You had about 1.6 registered voters voting in the second round of the election, right? What happened with the 800,000 voters? Were they Unity Party or CDC Party? CDC or Unity Party partisans, or they just didn't have interest in those two political parties? 800,000 Liberians. Now, that number is going to grow. If you look at the rate of growth of the previous numbers that participated in the last election, and I mean in 2017 and the 2022, let's take Monserrato alone. Monserrato had, I think, 717, I stand to be corrected, 1,000 plus voters in 2017. In 2023, you have more than 900,000 registered voters in Monserrato alone. So you move the needle moved by almost 200,000 or a little over 200,000. So you can see there's going to be growth. So that's why we're saying we're targeting the right generation of people with the right messaging. And we think if we go across the country with the plethora of programs that we want to execute, it's going to change the understanding. But we cannot even have a discussion around, let's have two-party state. No, we cannot, because to have such a discussion, you must show threats. For example, how does having multiple political parties threaten the democracy of our country? The political parties are individually financed. They're financed by their partisans. People will have different mindsets. So the issue of multiplicity of political parties does not threaten the democracy. What it does, enhances it.
Granted,
let's go.
Because I don't want to go back to the 8,000 initially reference stuff, but let's go into the reason
which
why
8,000, but go ahead.
But let's go into the.
No, but let's go ahead. Which 8,000? Let's correct the numbers first.
No, when you mentioned 800,000.
No, I mentioned 700, a little over 700,000 in 2017, and then a little over 900,000 in 2023.
2023.
Right.
Okay. So now, Mr. Boakai has been making series of nominations, and then on last week, on the weekend, in fact, he issued an executive order on asset retrieval and investigation. I don't know whether you were able to read that release on the eMarshal website. If you haven't, we can pull it out and read it for you. But Mr. Boakai has constituted an asset retrieval team to retrieve and investigate assets without any emphasis for assets. So the team will decide whose assets to go after, what to investigate, what not to investigate. There are some who believe also that the start is wrong. Mr. Boakai should settle in, complete the formation of his government before chasing all of those things. Now, I'd like to solicit your initial opinion on particularly this asset retrieval thing. Do you see that appropriate?
Well, when you say asset, it has to be clear. He's not going after public asset. He's not going after private assets. He's going after government assets, right?
It's not clear.
So if it is not clear, he has no authority to go after private asset. The only person that can go after private asset is the courts of the Republic of Liberia. And that is if it is established that properties or assets were acquired illegally and funded with public resources. It's only the courts of Liberia. No government, no president in this country can do that. So I suspect clearly President Boakai is talking about public assets. And by assets, I think it means generators, vehicles, other movable assets of government that may still be in the possession of certain non-private individuals.
Okay, let me just read portion of this.
Read it. Let's see.
So this is an issue on the 3rd of February. And he said, it says, the president of blah, 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 has directed former officials of government to, without any delay and hesitation, turn over all assets of government in their possession.
That's public. That's assets that are owned by government.
The directive issued Friday, according to the
But
president.
no, Mr. Kawa, let's not exhaust our time.
This is very important, Mr. Freeman. This is very important. Part of the team's functions will focus on investigating assets and also working with the relevant agencies of government to prosecute those found criminally liable, meaning there's a restriction on only past government officials.
Well, again, you see, there is something about communication. I hope you know communication is a whole course at the university.
Sure.
You know, the encoder and the decoder. If you speak, you're encoding, somebody who's listening, and interpreting is decoding. At this point, as president of Liberia, we have in which he's speaking. He's speaking as the president of Liberia, and he has said, he has directed, that's the first thing. To whom is that addressed? All former government officials. He said, you have assets, you must turn them over immediately because the new government needs to work with those assets. So if you took office furniture, computers, generators, fuel that was stuck in the drum at the different ministries for generators, whatever else, you must turn them over, and that committee will investigate. So let's look at the audience first. If I'm speaking as a pastor and I say to all church members, I'm speaking to my church members. So in this case, he's speaking in that instance. However, on the issue of assets owned by former government officials that are now private citizens, if assets in terms of houses and properties, if this government is interested in knowing anything about it, it would then be firstly to establish through an audit process that there was corruption, and to establish ownership of that property, and to also now go to court and say, look, even an audit report does not find you guilty. An audit report is only a perception report. It's just that the level of education in our country is so terrible.
If you were president...
Wait a minute. This clarification is extremely important. An audit report is a perception report. It goes to the legal team who in law they say they will do the weight of evidence. So just like you weigh a pound or me, you weigh anything, they will weigh the evidence and see. The auditor said Mr. Kawato wants shoes. The circumstances and the pieces of evidence presented by the auditor, is it solid enough? Can it pass the litmus test in law? If it can, then we'll take it to court. So under the circumstance, President Boakai is only referring to former government officials who may be in possession of assets of government. And I don't think it's broad. And
if you don't think it's broad, so you think it's restricted, I don't think you believe that it is restricted to
because he's defined his audience. He said,
you were elected president, will you restrict asset retrieval to only the CDC government, or will you go beyond the CDC government?
If I were president, it would be probably different. One, the team that will be constituted to do the handover notes will have a term of reference. And the term of reference would be, one, to clearly know what the listing of government assets are, what was procured over the period, what was damaged, was not. Those documentations are not available. Are available. And if they're not available, we'll communicate that to the sitting president and say, look, we having lack of cooperation on these fronts to be able to identify these things in the first place. So when I become president, it doesn't become a national issue, it becomes a side issue. Because don't forget, I'm elected president to change the status quo. I'm not elected president to discuss the status quo. So when I become a CEO or president, my job is to turn the organization around immediately. My immediate focus would be my driving policy that will turn the institution around. So in every respect, the issue of asset recovery will be a small committee that will do that. In America, for example, they have a repo group that repossess infrastructure. It doesn't even come to government's attention. So in every respect, we can set up a small repo group once we have the listing, all right, to say, okay, Mr. Kawa, you are minister or so-and-so, or deputy minister or assistant minister, you had a car, have you turned it over? Right? It's a small checklist. We'll speak to you. Get the telephone number, everybody, and where is the car that you turn over? To whom did you turn it over? That's not even going to make it to policy level. So you don't need an executive order like the incoming president needs to give an executive order to recover government assets. You don't need that.
Let's go to some of the non-UIN concern on these issues. You want to transition?
I think I have several concerns because you have covered a host of areas, but let's announce that relaying this broadcast is Truth FM, OKFM, and Voice of Liberia, and it's also live on Focus TV and Pope TV. These are all different medium and platforms by which you can get the conversation this morning with Honorable Simeon Freeman. Mr. Freeman, I'm quite interested in the conversation about yourself and why you're beginning this early. The frequency in your participation in Liberian election versus how you have performed in the election. Does it have something to do with it? You're talking about how early you are coming and the fact that you have not been coming earlier before. But one is thinking for people to know you, your consistency, you've always participated. How has that not helped your
Well, look, you can let me put it this way. You can stand in your room, or you can stand somewhere and say you want to be this. Have I adequately reached out prior to an election period? I wouldn't convince myself that I have. Have I adequately built the right teams? I don't think I have. And that's why I'm starting early enough. And I'm not starting on just a radio station. I'm starting by setting up the right teams that we didn't have before. The teams that will go to schools. You're going to see we're running lots of programs with schools, with civil society organizations, with NGOs across the country. There will be different private initiatives that will engage different groups across the country. So it's going to be a massive program where we'll be engaging, so the MPC and Simeon Freeman brand will be adequately communicated long in advance. So in our estimation, by 2026, 2027, that brand must be adequately across the country and known as an alternative to governance with these revolutionary governance infrastructure ideas that Liberia needs to compete, firstly with our neighbors and with the rest of Africa.
You don't think your proposals for Liberia, your vision for the kind of Liberia you want, is the one the population is not buying into?
No, they're buying into that.
For example, I come in a bit. You always have these views about a small government, and you've proposed the dissolution of many functionaries, right? Once I heard you speak about the function of the army, and your perspective about that, your perspective about the Ministry of Information.
So Basman, before you end your question, right? For you to even begin to suggest that you don't think this is not working in a white people country,
people feel your views are utopic. They're not as realistic.
Slow down. You must firstly do a survey. So the survey will say, look, John Brown proposed this idea, Simeon Freeman proposed this idea, Peter Paul proposes 30% in favor of this, in favor of that. I'm saying to you, we have not had the opportunity to adequately communicate and build the right networks across the country. And I give you an example of how, whether it was George Weah got elected. George Weah got elected, I think we're about 62% of the vote in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I stand to be corrected. Boakai got elected with just about 25,000 votes across the country. I think about 25,000 more votes than we are. And there were areas in which Boakai became beneficiary of votes where significant work wasn't done because those areas were hindered by the rainy season. What that tells us is because brand recognition was already prevalent in those areas, so they became beneficiaries of votes, not necessarily because the messaging was in order, but because they were known in those areas. And so out of frustration, people say, okay, look, we have this alternative. When people were transitioning from Ellen, they said we don't want more of the same. We want a Weah that has ran twice. So what we're saying is once we communicate adequately enough, we become beneficiary leadership, and we're extremely hopeful that the next president of Liberia in 2029 will be Simeon Freeman. Having said that, there are things on the State of the Nation address I think we want to deal with here. Training of 10,000 people, young people in IT in 6 months by President Boakai, we think is a joke.
You call that a joke?
It's a joke. Clearly, it's not realizable. Training in IT, you don't, first thing first, 10,000 people. Where are you going to gather them in the first place to train them? Let's assume you're not going to gather them to train them. Let's assume you're going to, so that means government is saying it's going to have constant electricity, it's going to have internet availability, or it's going to provide solar to the beneficiaries. That make that program extremely expensive. And then you can't train anybody in IT in 6 months unless whoever wrote that for the president. Basic training is not going to help us in any way. What we need to do is to establish STEM education in our existing schools that already have brick and mortar, that already have students sitting in the school, right? Where teachers are, we need to reposition our educational infrastructure because we have all of the information. USAID has done it for us, many other institutions have, so we know the teacher deficit, we know all of these things. So clearly for me, that is just a joke. And if you say, even let's take website development. If you want to build a proper website, you need more than 6 months. Let's take the simplest sort. If you need to do coding, you need a lot more than that. So, and then how are you going to train these people? If they stay to the houses with the inconsistency of electricity, the fact that they can't afford data, how are you going to train them? So it's not clearly realizable. So we need STEM education. Creation of a tourism bureau. Now, listen to the president. He said, the expense is heavy. He talked about 300 million. I want to correct that number. It's about 314 million. What Twitter then did was they basically divided.
Was he exact on 300?
He said 300 million. But again, I'm just correcting that. It's 314 because what Twitter then did, it divided pensioners' money from actual salary. So if you put that, it's still a liability monthly. So you divided 314 million by 12, you're talking, 314 million by 12 months, you're talking about $26 million per month we need just for payroll. Because pensioners are going to be paid every month anyway. So in every respect, if you have those kinds of liabilities, right? He said we collected about 710 million and we spend about $796 million. Those figures need to be reviewed. There was never a budget performance report for us to actually know the actual figure of what was actually collected. So we can safely assume far less than that was collected. Whatever driving.
Apparently, you did not see the report. Boakai threw you the figure out there. Maybe he might have.
There is no budget performance report. It would have been sent to the legislature, who is the beneficiary of the report.
That is something we can easily follow up to know.
You can follow up. The budget performance report was never presented to the legislature. It's the basis even for a new budget to be passed. We always query that during the last administration. So under the circumstance, even if you collected 710 million, let's just take it that the figure the president presented, which came from the old order according to him, is the case. That means 310 million you're spending almost almost not exact 50%, but almost 50% of your maybe about 40-something% of your total collection on payroll alone. Now, if you're doing that, then you come into power and you're appointing 2 ministers of states with all portfolio, one for special services, one minister of state with all portfolio. Then you opt in to create a tourism bureau, which should be a different bureau that has to be funded yet again. You see, as you enlarge the government, let's face it, you made 50,000 euros out.
Because you're alarming about the size of the envelope, the expenditure envelope, especially on salary, but then you're proposing the establishment of new bureaus, new entities.
So that's what I'm flagging. You're creating new bureau. You alarm me about the size of the envelope. Let me give you some background. When Madam Sirleaf came to power, Charles Taylor left. Charles Taylor, Judy Bryan left. About 35,000 people working for government.
Okay.
She took it up to 55,000. George Weah took it up to 70,000. So even if you go by President Boakai template, let's assume he doesn't fire anybody because he hasn't said that. Whatever the finance and development planning minister decided to do is something to be seen. But then you're talking about training 10,000 people quickly in the area of IT. I don't know how you're going to create jobs for them, whether it's going to be in the public service. So let's assume you're going to take it up to 80,000. Because even if you create a tourism bureau, it has to have extra employees. The Minister of State for Special Services has to have a budget, all right? He has to have extra employees. All of these different appointments that you're still filling up and piling up will have to have their own infrastructure and their support. That will create demand. Now, we haven't even come to servicing your government assets. you know, the different generators, the bills, the internet that has to be paid. From our last check, in the last budget, you were talking $125 million for recurring expense. You were talking another $157 million for what they classify as non-financial assets, right? So, but all of these assets that were acquired still comes out of government expense. So you're talking 125 plus 257 plus 157. You're talking 200. Let me see. That's 250. That's 227 something million dollars that you are talking about. If you add it to the 314 million, I think it's a little under over $600 million, right? Okay. So all of this money, you know about it, you complain about it, but you're still expanding the size of the government, and then you're still setting up these things that never work. For the drug policy, what are we setting up? We're setting up, the first test is president and vice president will take drug tests. According to the president, that's the way to fight drug. And then he sets up an interministerial committee. Let's get the reality. You appoint me as minister of whatever today. It's going to take me at least 90 days to get my foot on the ground. But then already I'm part of an interministerial committee. The interministerial committee that's supposed to deal with drug. From the history of Liberia, interministerial committee have never really worked anyway. But then they are the ones that are supposed to come up with policies. But you have a DEA already established by the legislature, a bureau that all you need to do is a capacity to fight drugs, and there are clear policies that can be prescribed, and that doesn't even come to the public glare. Basically, you just increase funding to them and actions that can be taken at the border, and that will change.
The president announced drugs as a national emergency. Isn't that a strong step?
Oh, go back. Ellen announced corruption as a public enemy, and because there was no clear policy, that's what I'm telling you about policy prescription. That's what I'm telling you about actions. So if you have the institution, right, you don't go announcing that. What you do is you take the steps.
All of that can be announced in just a state of the nation.
No. You take the steps. So you say, look, we will increase funding to the DEA, and the DEA will take the appropriate steps to make sure that drug is fought and dealt with. But you set up an interministerial committee that the DEA has to wait for to come up with procedures and policies when you have the drug trained guys at DEA who've gone on various trainings. They work with different drug portfolios around the world to be able to fight the issue of drug abuse in Liberia.
It is the national budget. It is the national budget that informs some of these policy prescriptions and policy decisions and what have you. Before the SONA, the president did not have that exclusive authority over the budget. The past administration are already worked on it.
It's gonna take me 2 hours to go through that whole budget, probably even 1 hour. You scan thematic areas, you'll be able to know areas where you can cut from, and you will be able to know from the word go. The president, when you become president, you have access to core information. For example, what is your revenue? He said, look, what the central bank reported to us is 20.5 million. Great. What the outgoing government said is what? 40 million. So you have access to information. So in that way, you're able to know, based on what you're now saying, you're able to know, look, these are areas I will get money from. So what you should be doing, the last budget, the last time I checked, I think it was 2022 budget, the support to DEA was over 400 and something million, right? A little over 400 million, but under 500 million. I'm 500,000, sorry, stand to be correct.
But we have to look at what does he want to do or achieve in a particular sector, and who is he bringing in to manage the sector?
Because
that's important.
No. You see, for me, firstly, listen. Let's take Kushta as the major issue. Okay. I watched a BBC or Al Jazeera documentary from Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
Drugs. I don't one of them. I don't know.
The one from the graveyard.
Yes, and they say Kush is made from human bones or something, and they extracting, they excavating human bones, and they're producing Kush and all that. So and the last time when we caught Kush, it was at the Sierra Leone border coming to Liberia. So clearly you can see that even if we didn't target the Sierra Leone border alone, and we targeted other border areas in our port, leveraging technology, we will be able to know what's in a container. Other countries are doing that. It's working. Do you need an interministerial committee for that? Do you need special budget review? When you become president, the guy you appoint as your finance minister have access to those information. And I will tell you, and I'm on the record, when this new guy was appointed finance minister, he was basically giving access immediately to all of the information, whether about the central bank, whatever else, because he became the designee, and so he could enable certain kinds of outcome. Having said that, we'll go to something else.
But just before you go to that, do you think the president's action or decisions about fighting drugs, do you find it cosmetic?
Oh, it is cosmetic. Bossman, let's face it. You say you would do a test or you and the vice president. I mean, let's face it.
Why are you laughing?
Let's face it. You know, you get one doctor, he come and he say, "Oh, the president." No, we're not privy and exposed.
No, we're talking about the president.
No, we're not privy to that, and we're not going to go there. Look, we have to get serious. You see, that's the problem of our country. If you want to fight drug, drug is eating. You see, what's driving this drug addiction policy? I mean, this drug addiction practice is unemployment, frustration, economic challenges. Now, if you're not addressing that, even if you say you want to address the issue of drugs, then you have to have a better structure in place. So this whole thing about my vice president,
better structure?
a better structure, like I said, increase support to the DEA. Say clearly, let's be realistic. Let's take fire service. Fire service in the last government were getting about $1.something million. The vice president office was getting $3.something million. The speaker office was getting just about the same thing fire service was getting. Now, fire service is supposed to provide fire service to the entire Republic of Liberia, 5.something million people. You gave it about $1.something million. Then you gave DEA less than $500,000. That gets serious. You don't have scanners. I think somebody, when I said it the last time, a radio person said DEA has only one car. So let's be realistic. If you want to help DEA to fight, you don't need an interministerial committee. You don't need a president and vice president taking drug tests. What you need is increased support, immediate increased support to DEA and expanding DEA capacity and setting up the necessary technology. Technology is so easy today. Simple cameras at our border. People can sit in the office at DEA and watch everything that passing through those borders. That's going to require funding to do that. Simple technology will enable access to every information. You can scan those things easily. So if you say increase support to, that's what they do in America. They don't set an interministerial committee. They enable their DEA. That's what they do in even our neighboring countries.
Incentives for officers. The DEA director Designate Ibrahim Kuma at his confirmation hearing did announce that he will begin with $400 for DEA officers. Isn't that a good start?
But
I don't know where he's going to get the money from.
He announced that. Thank you. He announced that. I don't know where he's going to get the money from. And incentives is one thing. If you incentivize them and you set up the right structure, then it's going to work. Okay, you're a journalist. No microphone. How are you going to work?
Difficult.
Good. So you have to give the guys the tools that they need to work. You have to look at living conditions. So it's a full package. That's why I said I would have announced as president, we will immediately increase support to the DEA and work with them to develop the right policies to ensure Liberia is a drug-free society. Alternatively, I would have announced that we're developing the series of economic programs to provide employment. Don't take my word for it. Look, there have been studies done globally. Spain, Italy, America, the entire European Union, all around the world. Areas where there are unemployment and reduced economic activity, what do you have? You have two outcomes: increase in drug consumption, increase in abuse of women. It's a global study. Anybody that's listening to me that want to speak to that can. Everywhere around the world. So wherever you have economic issues, it's assisted by drug issues. The third thing that happens in those environments, you know what? More children. Watch it. Why do you think more children come out of refugee camp? It's something about our gender. Once we're broke and desperate, we want to have more sex.
Okay, folks, we are having a conversation with the political leader of the MPC. That's the Movement for Progressive Change. Mr. Simeon Freeman is here. This broadcast is relayed on 2FM, OK FM, Voice of Liberia, and it's also live on Focus TV and Probe TV. My name is Austin Abu is here. I think we have to transition to something else. We have a long list, a checklist here.
Yeah, very
That
long.
Mr.
And
Simeon will have to address these issues in
Please,
1 hour.
go ahead.
And so,
But we still have to give the callers chance to participate.
obviously, we will do that. Now, I'd like us to look at some of the people who are supposed to be implementing the policies that Mr. Boakai wants to achieve within the period of 1 year, the first 1 year. Looking at the gender minister, the police inspector general, the minister of commerce designate, the minister of foreign affairs. Those are the first 4. Do they fit within your criteria that you would have preferred for foreign minister, for example, commerce minister, police IG, and gender minister?
It will be difficult to go after certain people because I have no idea of the capacity.
Okay.
But I'm more keen on the overall vision. What does President Boakai want to do? What does he want to accomplish? It's extremely important for me. Because you see, people have always looked at the wingers, right? The team, the coach is the team. Am I creating a vision so you can see?
Sure.
If you have the coach will assemble a team that he knows very well, and he knows that if I put this guy, even though he may not have played externally, but he can get the job done. Let's take a football team like maybe like Cape Verde. You never thought Cape Verde would even come this far in football, but their coach put his team together. He trained the team. He knows the team. So the team plays according to the coach's objective. If at any point he sees them going astray, he has a way of infusing one player to put them back on track. He has a way of standing on the sideline, communicating to the captain quickly and putting them back. What is President Boakai's vision for Liberia? What he's saying and what we see are two different things. You see, and that's why we're saying it's going to be more of the same and no difference. So those who have hope for Liberia, they can have hope because clearly President Boakai, what he's doing is increasing our public expense account. You know, I didn't hear in the presidential speech a major place like our airport. What are we doing with it? Is a gateway to our country. We're not, the entire speech only said what everybody else said. Liberians will participate in the economy, we'll invest in, we'll have more economic participation, and we enlarge the private sector. Every president before him, even Judy Bryant as the interim president said that, Taylor said that, Doe said that, if you're much older, you would know that. Torba before him said some of those things. Some of those people have policies that supported those things. A lot of other people just spoke. Listen, if you make $10,000, it's a lot of money per month, US dollar. But you're paying rent for 5 different girls, and you're giving them probably $800 a month, each of them. Right? Then every evening you're a guy you like to drink, you like to associate. Every evening you go to the beer booth, people say, oh, Kawa, man, yeah, man, let me take a beer, man, take. Before you leave from there, you probably spend about, say, $100. $10,000 is a lot of money. Your lifestyle, if you come to me and say, look, next year, this year, I'm saving $5,000 from my salary to start a project, I will tell you, Mr. Kawa, you're joking, because your lifestyle hasn't changed. So I'm saying, when we look at pronouncements in government, we look at the choices government is making, we still carrying the same bureaucracy. We may even add on. Don't tell me what you see on the surface are the key appointments. Don't tell me each of those people will not be required to bring in Unity Party partisans and increase the number of employees. And then what's going to happen? You're going to have a large bureaucracy, and then the government grinds to a halt. And then when the Japanese build one lane road, one lane bridge, or one lane road, they press your major project. There is no clear agenda for investment in the economy. It doesn't take the president a magic to have said, you know, I was listening to have said, the issue of urban migration is a major thing. Monrovia has about 1.6 million people. The rate of migration to Monrovia, I think, is about 4% or so. Now, I didn't hear we will incentivize businesses to set up in rural Liberia. That means we will de-incentivize migration to the city, and we will incentivize businesses going to settle. So let's say Mr. Kawa has a factory that makes black soap, and it has 50 employees. And the government say, okay, look, If you set up in rural Liberia, will give you, you will not pay taxes for 1 year, or you will not pay taxes for 10 years. You wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that, you wouldn't do that. They incentivize in your business to set up that. Take this radio station. You can have a small relay point here, and you can have your radio station in Banga situated there because of the tax opportunity it presents for setting up in rural Liberia. Those are solid policy statements. What we've seen is we've seen an executive order for possession of assets. We've seen empty speeches, but in action we've seen trying to create tourism bureau. Do you need to create tourism bureau to say, look, coming to Liberia tomorrow in Kenya? In Kenya or in Rwanda, they didn't set up a tourism bureau to say when you come into Rwanda, you don't need a visa. Just come anywhere around the world. The president of Kenya didn't set up a tourism bureau for that. You didn't need tourism bureau to say we're going to fund $10 million annually and invest in touristic activities so that we have a tourism fund. But instead, we're setting a tourism bureau because the president comes from an order where everything is bureaucratic, and as a bureaucrat himself, everything has to go through that expense scale. It means we'll be spending more money on consumption by the government this year and next year, and nothing's going to change. I didn't hear the president say on the issue of rule of law. He said they come out with an arrest policy. Do you know that the court system in Liberia is not widespread? In Cape Man, they got one court maybe in the capital, right? So it means that I don't know Cape Man all too well, but I know Grand Bassa, right? If I'm in say Bijo town or Yakba town or one of those towns and something happened to me, it means I have to go to Grand Bassa to Buchanan to be addressed by a law. And the support to our legal infrastructure is also weak, even in the Monrovia area. If we increase funding to the judiciary and increase training to the judiciary, we'll be able to provide those are thematic policy areas that deals with the areas that you say you arresting. But instead, you say one thing and you're doing another thing. And as technicians, we look at what you do, not what you say, because talk is cheap.
We look at what you do and not what you say because talk is cheap. We can exhaust our list because we have to afford all the callers show the chance to talk. Right. So, but Mr. Freeman will always be available to us to interact with you because there are many issues that will definitely emerge, and Mr. Freeman will be available to talk to you. So let's go to the telephone lines and interact with you on 0776 104 104. 0886 500 104. Those are the numbers to call and be a part of the show. For those of you in the diaspora and want to participate, our WhatsApp number is +231 886 500 104. Again, our WhatsApp number is +231 886 500 104. Those are the numbers to call and be a part of the show. This person should be our first participant here. Let's hear you. Go ahead. Thank you very much. Let's get the next person. Good morning. Go ahead.
Hello?
The next time we'll disqualify you. No. We can't continue. Hello? Please go ahead. Okay. Mr. Yeru.
Mr. Yeru.
Yeah, thank you. I think Mr. Freeman, good morning. I thought in Australia, but I want to recommend something. I noticed that running opposition for long. It is time that we who are not political and some of you are political that do something then also ideas or something different in government. Because the truth is, some of us all go down and with brilliant ideas would all along with us in our grace. And then we would think that in the level of criticism in this country, I think it's good. But some of
Okay. Thank you, Lawrence. Christian, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're live. You have just 30 seconds. No, Mr. Freeman did not suggest that the action is meant to assume or usurp the role of the DEA.
No. He didn't say that.
He is saying the action is cosmetic. It does not address the real issues. And the government, the country does not need a ministerial team to address those issues within the DEA or affecting drug abuse or usage in the country. So let's get that clear. Cooper Pastor will go ahead. Oh, what does that? What does it? This
We're talking about running the state.
have
There
to
you
do
go.
with what have to do with state functionaries.
Has Mr. Boakai run a field venture before?
Thank you, Cooper.
Let me
Yeah, I will go
try to get this person in here. Okay. Yes, right.
Let's hear you. Go ahead. Let's hear you. Which part?
Which part of last speech?
What is man talking?
Let me take this person here. Hello, good morning.
I gotta send our brother to school.
Good morning, let's hear you.
Good morning to your guest. My name is Mr. Gabriel Ono Wangwan. I'm calling from the recently towards your committee.
Go ahead, 30 seconds.
My friend, I think the studio guests were lamenting on the issue pertaining to the drugs that the new DEA board is saying that those that you want to work with, all right, he is going to be paying in $400 monthly. And there was saying, he doesn't know where that will generate money from. But they haven't just come to the just do 1 minute.
No, 1 minute too much, but go ahead.
If the DEA will try to counter the drug issue on a community level,
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. Go ahead, fine. Let's hear you. 30 seconds.
Hey, man, but we're talking civil policy today. They can't talk about quality better giver.
I mean, make your point. All right, thank you. No, he's, I think, particularly trying to state why he has these brilliant ideas, but yet his convention is not going down in the community.
Davos, I think Davos was on the line, but let's hear this person. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Austin. I'd like to say good morning to your guest. How are you? Good morning, Abu. This is
Morning.
Richardson. I joined the conversation from Boakai. And I would like to say thanks to Simeon Freeman. He said it all. No, for me, I'm particular for the fall of John. Because when you notice during the campaign, there were one of the key things that music project ran with, pushing other things. But for President Boakai, don't tell her that he is back, President will be doing the justice. For me, I don't see any logic in that. Because during the justice, honestly, when I'm not late, any policy,
I don't see any logic in that. The message going across. Davos, go ahead quickly. 30 seconds. And you share portion of that responsibility because you won't hear the communications over the NPC. So you
I ain't put it on the border.
so you share,
Right.
how do we do that? How do we do that?
Right.
Thank you very much, Davos. Next person, go ahead.
Right.
Thank you very much. We go back to our guest. You listen to all of the concerns from the public.
Right,
As
yeah.
always.
So I'll deal with the first one from Mr. Lawrence Yekula. Thank you here.
Lawrence Yelu.
Yelu, sorry. Mr. Yelu, I apologize for that. He's a very fine gentleman, very bright. So look, I've always said we're very open. If the government wants to engage with us to say areas, we're very open to helping the government. But there will not be a situation where I would dress up, go to our president's house, stand outside the gate, and the next thing journalists will say, oh, Simeon Freeman may gotta be my look for a job. You know, so if they want white paper, yeah, we're very open to that. We've done it for other places. The other thing has to do with what Mr. Pastor will talk about the vest factory. Again, that's the thing about political hooliganism and so-called dead loyalties. That factory in question, we're producing 5,000 bottles per hour, so we shut it down to expand it to 25,000 bottles per hour. He doesn't even know how much money has been invested in it. And we targeting reopening between now and March. And he see the billing is also expanded. I don't think he even have gone around and to see the billing has been expanded.
Is this still at the place, Stephen Tower?
Right. So the billing has been expanded. The warehouse have also been expanded. You imagine you move from 5,000 bottles an hour to 25,000 bottles an hour. It's a huge capacity. And the reason why is because we're trying to benefit from economies of scale, right? So we had to stretch out. Having said that, coming to the core issues, I want to thank those who listened, those who didn't call, those who said nothing. The purpose of a healthy opposition is to be able to have an alternative governance infrastructure. So government has a group of people outside a sycophantic arrangement that sits around the president that wants to preserve their job. You have this group on the outside that fears nothing. Oops, current stop. Anyway, we ended the show, right?
Yeah, almost.
It will take some time, so.
Almost to the transition.
Yeah, so.
And these are just the problem you're talking about. How do you
train
10,000
people?
When you get
Jeremy, thank you. It was a nice show. I don't know how long it takes for your power to come on. Oh, it's right back. But it will take, what, another 1 minute for you to turn it back on?
no, yeah, just
Okay, we obviously sincerely apologize for that brief interruption. I know it was inconveniencing, but we apologize. So Mr. Freeman was concluding.
Right. So basically, we need a healthy environment where you have a healthy opposition on the outside, and a serious government will engage the opposition and say, look, how could we govern this country alternatively? Let me give you an example. What you call the National Investment Commission, and people want to be National Investment Commission chair today.
Yeah.
Do you know how it was developed? It came about because President Torba went to visit a businessman, Parker Pitt.
yeah, Parker.
The guy who you call Parker Pitt, Clarence Parker. So he's sitting down, and Mr. Parker says to Mr. President, Mr. President, we're concerned, how do we expand the private sector to have increased participation? What alternative, what incentives could we create? And Mr. Parker said to Mr. President, let me ask you something. Which of your government officials know what it is to meet payroll at the end of the month? Because if you know how to meet payroll, then you will know what structures to put in place. Like here at Freedom FM, your boss know what it is to meet payroll at the end of the month.
Exactly.
Right now, LEC, when you put generator on immediately. Fuel has to be in that generator. Things go down here, it has to be serviced. President talked for a while. And he said, come to think of it, all those guys are bureaucrats. So he said, how can we help? He said, let's set up a National Investment Commission. That's how come Parker became the head. And what happened? The purpose of that investment commission was not for foreign businesses.
Okay.
It was to help. So you needed a gateway. Like the current confusion you have. You want something, you go to the Ministry of Finance. You want something, you go to the Ministry of Commerce. The investment commission was supposed to be a one-stop shop where as a local business, if you went there, you could be assisted. And during those times, you know the biggest rice importers to Liberia were all Liberians?
Okay.
One old man called Old Man Ketter, the former Minister of Public Works. He was one of the biggest rice importers. You talk about Mesorado Group. Those were Liberian-run businesses that had foreigners working for them. There were opportunities and incentives developed for the commission was that gateway where you went there and they communicated with a commerce minister, or finance minister, all those things. For example, this whole thing about what you call IPD, Import Declaration Permit. It grew out of South Korea. Who brought it to Liberia first? It was former commerce minister Emmanuel Shaw, who also became finance minister. He brought that. But clearly, that was for a purpose. Does it serve a purpose today? No. Do we need to have IPD? Do I need to go to Commerce Minister, fill out IPD? Now one minister decide, okay, I let Kawa, maybe Kawa is going to give me 25 cents on every sardine, so I'll give him IPD for sardine. I don't like this man, so we don't get him sardine IPD. So you have sardine to import, but you can't import it because you don't have the IPD. Those are some of the things it does. I want to import rice. I shouldn't have to go and get permit. If 200 people want to import rice, let them import it. The more rice on the market,
the lower the price.
Simple.
Good for the consumers also.
Okay, folks. So, thanks to you ever so much, Mr. Freeman, for spending some time with us this morning. We hope we can have you here frequently.
Anytime.
Thank you for...
And I think Mr. Freeman is very ready now for these engagements, and he would like to have them more. I think it serves his political desire very well, especially 2029. That's gonna make it 4 times.
I know you and Kawa will help to make me president of Liberia. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to the people
we want to
of
start by
Liberia.
making you a legislator first.
Well, you see, that's the thing. You want to make me legislator. What changes can I make? I can't make any changes as a legislator. I'll be 1 vote. But with all of this idea at the helm, I will drive outcome. But that's how I heard the individual talking. How many Liberian businesses started from renting a store to a 7-story office? I will do a media tour of our office to see that we have a private gym in our office. We have a private cafeteria in our office building. We have a private TV entertainment room. All for staff, just only for staff that works there. We even work into a program where we're developing a kitchen in there. If you work there, we feed you as well. How many businesses transition from a store where they were renting on Benson Street to a 7-story building? You see progress. So when you put me at the helm of Liberia, then people start saying, look at the story of Liberia, like people talking Rwanda today. But right now, don't lift your hope too high. Things will get nasty, things will get dirty, because nothing's going to change. Even if you made Jesus Christ Minister of Finance, nothing can change. Nothing will change because the expense is looking you in the face. You have to fund everything. People will be coming with a program. Gender people will say they're traveling. Since we established
So
gender...
it's a vision bearer problem.
It's a vision bearer problem. That's it. Every country. I'll give you one last story, then I'll leave, not to take up your time. 2 countries, Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal. I was sitting with the French ambassador, one of the French ambassadors to Cote d'Ivoire. It's a good friend, and we're talking. And he told me, he said, you know the difference between Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire? I said, no. He said, Ofwe Boigny went to Paris at after 40, at age 40. He was already a man. He fell in love with French infrastructure. Leopold Senghor went to Paris when he was in his teens, went through French education. He fell in love with French educational system. Leopold Senghor came back. He developed a massive, well-developed educational system in Senegal, one of the best in Africa. Ofwe Boigny developed Petit Paris in Cote d'Ivoire. Eventually, Cote d'Ivoire fell into trouble. Eventually, Senegal is still one of the fastest growing economies across the continent. 2 different countries, 2 different outlook. What happened? The vision of the country. Tanzania is another vision. Julius Nyerere. All right, he developed a country. Today is one of the most resilient economies across Africa. Liberia, we developed a patriarchal infrastructure where the president was the biggest benevolent and was the biggest person giving benevolence around. And so what happened? That's where we are today. Everybody look, every place we calling on the government to come to our aid. Even where communities supposed to collect money to do whatever is different. Look at America. The young children go to school and they contribute to a cause. In our case, they say come and give. That's what we've developed. That's why we need clearly a vision bearer that will transform this country.
Thanks a lot. His name is Simeon Freeman, and of course he's a political leader and of course of the movement for progressive change. He has been our guest here on the first segment of the nation's premier breakfast platform, the Freedom